People made it sound like I chose a tattoo over my husband. That was not how it felt that night. It felt like one small piece of ink, one joke, one thing Caleb and I had always understood. Samir called it disrespect, but I called it proof that nobody could control me. By the next week, he let me keep the tattoo and removed himself from the marriage. My name is Ingrid Voss, I am 39, and I work as a pediatric occupational therapist. People made it sound like a woman who taught boundaries for a living should have understood her own marriage better. At the time, Caleb was just our thing. One old friendship, one private language, one part of me Samir was supposed to trust. That was how I said it. Our Fridays used to start on the back porch. Samir would bring out 2 chipped mugs and sit with me while the evening cooled the boards under our feet. He did not interrupt my work stories. He did not try to fix every parent, every child, every messy case from the clinic. He listened until I had emptied the day out of my mouth. That was real. Sometimes I drew tiny maps on napkins for his work trips. Samir scheduled civil projects all over the state, and he hated arriving in a new city without knowing where to get decent coffee. I marked bakeries, quiet streets, and bookstores near his hotels. He kept those maps in his glove box long after the trips ended. So no, people made it sound like there had never been love. There had been. Then Caleb started texting during porch time. He had been my best friend since college, before Samir, before marriage, before I became the kind of woman who had to explain why a man outside her marriage knew her favorite songs. Caleb had just gone through a breakup and had been staying on our couch more often. 2 nights, 4 dinners, 1 spare blanket that somehow stopped going back into the closet. Samir asked if something had changed since Caleb started spending more evenings with us. He asked it softly, like he was trying not to sound like the kind of man he feared becoming. That was Samir's flaw. He waited too long to name pain because he did not want to look controlling. I told him nothing had changed. He asked if I still needed our porch time to be ours. I heard ownership. I heard rules. I heard my stepfather telling my 16-year-old self who I could see and when I had to come home. I told Samir people made male-female friendships sound dangerous because they were insecure. He looked at his mug and said he had only asked a question. Later, Dana texted me from the clinic and said men only called a friendship inappropriate when they knew they could not compete with it. 2 laughing emojis. 1 heart. 1 sentence I should not have liked so much. The neighborhood bar was small enough that everyone heard everything, but loud enough for people to pretend they did not. We went there on Saturday because Nico had a birthday, and Nico liked places with sticky tables, cheap lights, and fries that came in metal baskets. Caleb came too, of course. People made it sound like that was the first problem, but Caleb had been coming to things for years. He sat beside me instead of across from me. That was the kind of detail Samir noticed and said nothing about. The table smelled like beer, lemon cleaner, and hot oil from the kitchen. Layla, Samir's sister, sat across from us with Nico. Dana came late, still in clinic clothes under a leather jacket, and she dropped into the booth like she had entered a scene already written for her. She loved when my life looked brave. It gave her a taste of risk without making her pay for it. Caleb leaned in to show me a photo on his phone, something stupid from college. I laughed before he even got to the best part because I already knew the ending. That was the thing with Caleb. He made me feel like there was a version of me nobody had filed down yet. With him, I was not a wife, not a therapist, not the steady woman who packed lunches and paid bills. I was the girl who left parties at midnight just to find another one. Samir asked what was funny. I told him it was just our thing. He nodded. That nod should have been enough for me to stop. It was not. Silence from Samir often made me push harder, because if he would not set the line, I wanted to know how far away the line actually was. Dana looked between us and said Caleb was basically my emotional husband. People laughed. I laughed too long. Samir smiled once, the social kind of smile that does not touch the eyes. Layla watched his hand tighten around his glass. Nico looked at his fries and changed the subject, but the joke had already landed. Caleb raised his hands like he was innocent and said, indirectly, that he had earned the title after surviving 15 years of my moods. Dana said Samir should be grateful someone else handled the hard parts. That made the table laugh again. I said Caleb knew my moods faster than Samir because Caleb actually paid attention. There it was. Not a joke anymore. 1 sentence. 3 laughs. 4 seconds of Samir looking at the table. People made it sound like I had said my husband was nothing. I did not say that. I said something sharper because it sounded casual enough to deny later. Samir stopped participating after that. He answered Nico when spoken to, but his hand stayed around his glass. Layla asked him if he wanted to step outside for air. He said he was fine, and I heard performance. What I did not hear was restraint. On the way to the car, Caleb touched my elbow and asked if Samir was mad. He asked it with a half smile, as if Samir's discomfort was a small weather pattern we could walk through. I told him Samir would be fine. Caleb said, indirectly, that he did not want to cause trouble. Then he added that we had always been hard for outsiders to understand. Outsiders. I let that word sit. Samir drove home with the windows cracked. The night air smelled like wet pavement and fried food from the bar. For 3 blocks, he said nothing. Then he asked why I had to make him look replaceable in front of everyone. Specific and factual. That was worse than jealousy. He named the bar. He named Dana's joke. He named my sentence about Caleb knowing me better. He asked what had happened to the part of our marriage that was supposed to stay between us. I told him he was making one comment into a case. He said it was not one comment. He said Caleb had slept on our couch for 2 weeks and somehow started sitting in the middle of our evenings. He said he had tried to be patient because he did not want to be the husband who told his wife who she could love as a friend. I heard that as accusation. I told him he was policing my friendships and dressing it up as pain. He said he was not afraid of Caleb. He said he was tired of being treated like a guest in his own marriage. That should have stopped me. Instead, I told him guests usually got better attention than wives. Samir pulled into our parking space and turned off the engine. He did not answer right away. The dashboard light made his face look older. He asked if I wanted him to fight Caleb for a chair at his own table. I told him I wanted him to stop acting wounded every time I had a life outside him. That sentence gave me power for about 5 seconds. Then he got out of the car and waited for me at the building door without reaching for my hand. He always reached for my hand near the stairs because the second step was cracked. That night, he walked ahead and held the door open like I was a neighbor. The next Monday, Dana repeated the bar joke in the clinic break room while the coffee machine hissed behind us. She said Caleb and I should make our friendship with benefits official just to annoy Samir. I told her not to be ridiculous, but I laughed. 2 co-workers smiled. 3 likes appeared later on Dana's private story when she posted a photo of our coffee cups with the caption about wives needing best friends. 1 message from Caleb came in before lunch, saying Dana was trouble but not wrong. At home that evening, Samir asked if the break room had enjoyed him too. I asked what that meant. He said Layla had seen Dana's story. I said people made it sound like he was the only one allowed to have feelings. He said he was trying to have one in private before everyone else turned it into content. After that, Nico stopped replying in the group chat. No announcement, just no reaction under Caleb's jokes. Layla sent fewer heart emojis. Samir began taking his tea to the small desk by the window instead of the porch. I told myself everyone was being dramatic. That is easier than admitting a room has started to move away from you. The tattoo idea started as a joke in the clinic parking lot, which made it sound smaller than it became. Dana was sitting on the hood of her car after work, eating pretzels from a paper bag. I had just finished a session with a child who hated tags on shirts and loud transitions. All day I had used calm words about body boundaries, safe choices, and asking before touching someone else's things. Then I walked outside and told Dana Samir was still acting strange about Caleb. People made it sound like I planned the tattoo from the beginning. I did not. It grew because nobody stopped feeding it. Dana said Samir needed one clear message that marriage was not ownership. I said boundaries were one thing, control was another. Dana nodded hard, the way she did when she wanted my courage to cover her own fear. She asked what the clearest message would be. I said maybe Caleb and I should tattoo it on our arms. She laughed. I laughed. Then Caleb answered my text in under a minute. 3 dots. 1 yes. 1 terrible idea that started breathing. That Friday, the tattoo studio smelled like green soap, ink, and latex gloves. The walls were covered in flash sheets and black frames. A small bell rang when Caleb and I walked in. Dana came with us, still excited, recording little clips of the neon sign in the waiting area. Caleb said the idea was insane in the tone he used when he meant yes. He wore a grey hoodie and kept rubbing his inner forearm like the skin already knew. I asked if he was scared. He said, indirectly, that he had survived worse than matching ink with me. The phrase was mine. Friendship with benefits forever. People made it sound like I did not understand what those words meant. I understood enough. That was the point. It was funny because it was wrong. It was sharp because Samir would hate it. It was just our thing because Caleb and I had always lived in jokes other people found too close. The tattoo artist read the stencil and paused. She asked if we were sure about the wording. The room went quiet for 1 clean second. Her gloves snapped softly at the wrist. Dana stopped recording. Caleb looked at me instead of answering. That was the first place where the door could have opened. Not fully. Just a crack. A stranger had no history with us. No reason to protect Samir. No reason to protect me. She only looked at the words and gave us 1 chance to hear them as the world would hear them. I heard judgment instead. So I smiled and said it was perfect. Caleb laughed after I did, half a beat late. That delay should have mattered. It did not because by then, I needed him to want it as much as I did. The stencil paper was cold when the artist pressed it to my inner forearm. Purple letters appeared backward in the mirror. Friendship with benefits forever. The words looked less funny on skin than they had in my mouth. I told myself that was normal. 1 stencil, 2 arms. 1 permanent joke. The needle started with a small angry buzz. Dana filmed my face for the first few seconds and told me I looked fearless. Caleb sat across from me and made a show of holding eye contact. He said, indirectly, that Samir would have to accept I came with history. History. That word felt safer than disrespect. When Caleb's turn came, he chose the same placement. The artist cleaned his arm, set the stencil, and asked again if both of us wanted the exact phrase. Caleb looked at his phone before answering. Just a glance. Quick enough to ignore if you wanted to ignore it. I wanted to ignore it. He said yes. The clear bandage went over my fresh ink like a shiny little window. I turned my arm under the light. The words were there, not imagined, not explainable as tone, not something I could later say had been misunderstood. Caleb stood beside me and held his arm next to mine. Dana took the mirror photo first. Then I took one. In the tattoo studio mirror, Caleb's arm pressed near mine, both bandages catching the light. I was smiling with my chin lifted. Caleb looked proud. Or maybe he looked nervous. At the time, I chose proud because it helped my story. I posted it to my close friends and tagged the studio. The caption said Samir could question us, but he could not erase us. That was the humiliation. Not the ink alone. The caption. The tag. The audience. The way I turned my husband's private discomfort into a public challenge he could only lose. Dana made a sound when she saw the caption. It was not quite approval this time. She said, indirectly, that maybe it was a lot. Caleb asked if I had tagged him. I told him yes, of course, because the whole point was that we were not hiding. 3 likes came fast. 4 comments. 1 screenshot I did not know Layla had already sent to Samir. Samir's message came while the artist was explaining aftercare. He asked whether I understood what I had just made permanent. Quiet. No threats. No angry paragraph. Just that. I typed that he was proving my point by reacting. He did not answer. The artist handed me a small packet of aftercare cream. Dana put her phone away. Caleb said we should get food, but his voice had changed. Less wild, more careful. At the diner next door, Nico left the group chat after someone posted a zoomed-in crop of the tattoos. I watched his name disappear from the member list. Dana's last message had only 3 words. Maybe call him. I stared at those words under the diner's yellow light while Caleb talked to the server about fries. People made it sound like the tattoo broke the marriage. No, the tattoo only made the break readable. The morning after the tattoo, the bandage pulled tight on my arm when I bent my elbow. The skin underneath looked red around the letters. I stood in the bathroom with the fan humming above me, trying to peel the edge of the clear film without making it hurt worse. The apartment was quiet enough that every small sound became rude. People made it sound like Samir was waiting outside the bathroom with anger. He was not. On the floor beside the door, he had left aftercare cream and clean gauze. That was the thing I did not know what to do with. Not a speech, not a punishment, not a demand to see the tattoo. He had bought what I needed and left it where I would find it without having to ask. 1 tube, 2 folded pieces of gauze, 1 kindness I could not turn into control fast enough. I sat on the closed toilet seat and looked at the supplies. My arm was still raised. The words under the bandage shone in the bathroom light. Friendship with benefits forever. The letters looked darker in the morning, less like a dare and more like a record. For a few minutes the room made something plain. Samir was not trying to own my skin. He was not trying to erase Caleb from my life. He was trying not to beg his wife for a kind of respect that should not have needed begging. He had seen the post, the caption, the tag, the joke, and still gone out for aftercare cream. A person can be hurt and still be gentle. That almost reached me. Then I heard my stepfather's voice from years ago, not in words but in the feeling behind them. Rules, permission, control. The old house where my mother would look away while he told me which friends were bad for me. The old bedroom where I promised myself nobody would ever turn love into a locked door again. I picked up the cream. I told myself Samir's kindness was another way to make me feel guilty. That closed it. By the time I came out, he was in the living room folding a blanket from the couch. He had not slept in the bedroom. Layla stood near the window, coat still on, looking at him with the careful face people use when they know someone has already been made small. Layla asked if my arm was okay. I said it was fine. She asked if the marriage was okay. I told her people made it sound like I had burned down a house because of a tattoo. I said it was just our thing with Caleb, a joke that everyone had decided to weaponize against me. Layla looked at Samir, not me. That made me sharper. I told her she did not need to stand there like a witness. Samir said she was his sister and she came because he asked her to. That sentence changed the room. Samir asking someone to come meant he had stopped trusting the 2 of us alone with the truth. I said he was making his family part of our problem. He said, indirectly, that I had made everyone part of it first when I posted the caption. Layla did not smile. She said Samir had not slept in the bedroom and had still bought supplies for the tattoo. She asked what more proof I needed that he was trying to be decent. I heard accusation again, so I gave them a controlled piece of truth, the kind that sounds like compromise but keeps the center untouched. I said maybe I should not have posted the caption. I said maybe tagging the studio was too much. I said I could stop posting about the tattoo if everyone would stop acting like my friendship with Caleb was up for debate. Samir looked tired. He said the tattoo was not the whole thing. He said it was the years of calling his discomfort insecurity. It was Caleb on the couch, Caleb beside me at bars, Caleb knowing private jokes before my husband heard the public version. It was me using the word trust whenever he tried to name pain. The accumulation, not one incident. I told him he had let Caleb stay. I told him he had eaten with us, laughed with us, watched movies with us. I said he could not be silent for months and then act like I had forced him. Samir nodded once. He said I was right that he had been silent too long. The sentence did not give me the victory I wanted. It made the room heavier. He was not arguing from pride anymore. He was giving up pieces he did not need to defend. Layla said she would leave if we wanted privacy. Samir said no, she could stay. That was another small decision I tried not to see. Dana replied to my photo around noon with one sentence about hoping things cooled down. No jokes. No fire emoji. No brave girl speech. Just a sentence that stood far away from me. I showed Caleb her message and said everyone was losing nerve. He took longer to answer than usual. When he did, he said people were probably reading the phrase wrong. The phrase. Not our phrase. Not our tattoo. The phrase. I told myself he was being cautious because Samir was making everything tense. That evening, I walked past the bedroom and saw Samir packing work files into a separate bag. His laptop charger, a notebook, the folder where he kept project schedules. He moved quietly, without anger, like a man preparing for weather he no longer expected me to help him survive. I asked if he was going somewhere. He said only for early meetings. I did not believe him, but I wanted the lie more than the answer. Later, on the back porch, the blanket we used to share was gone from his chair. My half was folded neatly on mine. The boards smelled like rain and old leaves. One folded blanket. One empty chair. One boundary made of fabric. People made it sound like Samir abandoned the conversation. He had only stopped offering me places to sit inside it. 4 days after the tattoo, I sat in the clinic parking lot during lunch with my arm resting across the steering wheel. The bandage was gone by then, and the tattoo had started to itch. Black letters on tender skin. Friendship with benefits forever. It looked less like rebellion under noonlight, but I had already built too much around it to admit that. People made it sound like the world turned against me all at once. It was smaller than that. Dana stopped answering first. I sent her the tattoo photo again and asked if Samir was overreacting. Then I sent a second message saying Layla had turned the apartment into a courtroom. Then a third asking why everyone suddenly cared about a joke. She left all three unread while posting a photo of a quiet family dinner, her husband's hand visible beside a plate of pasta. 3 messages, 1 dinner post. No answer. I stared at the screen until my lunch break ended. After work, I went to Caleb's apartment because I needed somebody to still act like the tattoo meant what it had meant on Friday. His building hallway smelled like old carpet and takeout. He opened the door wearing sweatpants, and for the first time since college, he looked like someone who had not expected me to come. He let me in, but he did not hug me first. That was a shift. I asked if he had seen the comments. He said, indirectly, that people were misunderstanding the phrase. He said maybe we should stop tagging each other for a while. He said he did not want his clients or his ex seeing it and thinking something messy was going on. Something messy. People made it sound like Caleb was always honest about being self-protective. He was not. He wrapped it in concern. He said he did not want to make things harder for me. Then he asked if Samir had calmed down. I told him Samir was punishing me with silence. Caleb rubbed his tattoo through his sleeve and said silence might be better than a public fight. I looked at his arm. He had covered the tattoo. Mine was still visible. That detail moved through me slowly. Caleb liked emotional access without accountability. I had always known that, but I called it freedom because it sounded kinder. He wanted to be chosen in private jokes, late calls, old stories and crowded bars. He did not want to be named in paperwork, family conflict, or permanent consequences. I left after 15 minutes. At home, Samir was in the living room. The apartment smelled like lemon cleaner. His shoes were lined by the door, but one pair was missing, the pair he wore for overnight work trips. I saw the empty space on the mat and told myself it meant nothing. He asked me to sit. His voice was final and clean. No raised volume. No begging. He said I could keep Caleb, the tattoo, and the story I had made around both. He said he would no longer live inside it. That was his final offer. Not to choose between men, not to erase Caleb. To tell the truth plainly. To say the tattoo had been meant to hurt him. to say I had used friendship as a shield because it let me avoid the uglier word. I knew what he was asking. People made it sound like he asked for something simple. It was not simple to me. Simple truth would have made my whole defense collapse. So I gave him the one true thing I still had. I told him he had let Caleb sit inside our marriage for months because he was too afraid of looking jealous to set a real boundary. He could not refute it. His face changed, but not with anger. He accepted the hit because it was accurate. Samir had waited. He had called his silence patience. He had left me room to behave well and then looked wounded when I used the room badly. He said, indirectly, that I was right about his silence. Then he said I was wrong to treat that silence as permission to humiliate him. I hated that second sentence because it took the first one away from me. I told him he was using therapy language now because he wanted to sound reasonable. I told him he was finally becoming the controlling husband he had always pretended not to be. I told him if he trusted me, Caleb would never have felt like a threat. That was almost true. Almost true can carry a whole lie if you hold it tightly enough. Samir stood. He said he would handle things properly. No legal words, no threats, no explanation. Properly sounded like a door locking from the other side. He walked to the entryway and took his keys off the shared hook. The little brass hook swung after the keys left it. Then he placed my spare key on the table by the door. Not thrown, not dropped. Placed. A quiet action tied to a small object. That was when negotiation ended, though I still pretended it had not. Caleb texted while Samir was in the hallway. He said we should keep distance until things calmed down. I read it twice. Then I turned my phone face down because Caleb had somehow become another room going quiet. People made it sound like I had chosen him over my husband. That night, Caleb did not feel chosen. He felt careful. He felt far away. He felt like a man stepping backward from a fire he had helped me call a candle. Samir came back from the hallway with no keys in his hand. I asked where he was going. He said he had an early day and would sleep elsewhere. I told him he was being dramatic. He said nothing. That was the worst part. Samir's silence had changed. Before it asked me to notice, before it waited for me to soften for me. Before it made room for me to come back, this silence did not ask. It moved around me. I followed him to the door and said he was proving that he had wanted an excuse to leave. He put on his jacket. I said Layla had filled his head. He checked his pocket for his wallet. I said Caleb was the only person who had never tried to make me smaller. Samir looked at my tattoo then, not at my face. He said, indirectly, that I had made sure everyone knew that. Then he left. No slammed door. No last look. No speech I could cut apart later. Just the hallway swallowing his footsteps. I stood by the table with my spare key beside my hand. The tattoo itched under the apartment light. Dana was still unread. Caleb had gone careful. Layla had not answered my last call. Nico was gone from the group chat. 1 key. 2 empty hooks. 3 people not coming back to my side. Their silence was more frightening than any fight I had prepared for. 1 week later, I went to the apartment elevator lobby, expecting a house key handoff. The lobby smelled like floor polish and the Lily's Maren, the concierge, kept on her desk. Samir stood near the elevator with Layla beside him. She did not speak for him, but she did not leave him alone either. People made it sound like I should have known what was coming. I only saw Grant Ellis when he stepped away from the seating area with an envelope. He asked if I was Ingrid Voss. I said yes, and he placed the documents in my hand. My thumb pressed against the paper edge hard enough to bend it. On the first page, the title sat in plain black type. Petition for dissolution of marriage and motion for exclusive use of the marital apartment. The next date was listed below it. A housing possession hearing scheduled for the following month. I looked at Samir. He did not look away. He also did not explain. The evidence was already there without him speaking. The tattoo post, the caption. The tagged studio. Layla's saved screenshot. The group chat messages. My own texts defending the phrase as just our thing and calling Samir insecure for caring. I said it had only been a joke between friends. Grant said, indirectly, that he only needed confirmation of receipt, not the explanation. Maren looked down at her desk. Layla's mouth tightened, but she did not add anything. Samir pressed the elevator button once. Caleb deleted the tattoo post that morning, removed his tags, and told mutual friends the wording had been my idea. After that, the changes were practical. I moved into a small room above Dana's cousin's garage, where the window faced a brick wall and the heater clicked all night. The apartment access became part of the temporary hearing, and my share of the household money moved through instructions instead of habit. Nico stopped inviting me to birthdays, Layla blocked my number, and Dana sent one careful message saying she hoped I had support. Caleb kept his sleeve over the tattoo and let people think he had been pulled into my drama. At the clinic, one parent recognized the tattoo from a shared post, and my supervisor asked me to keep personal matters away from work. People made it sound like the tattoo proved I was free. One phrase, two arms, one friendship that stepped back when the room got hard. I thought permanent ink meant nobody could tell me where love was allowed to go. It only showed Samir that he had been right to stop competing for a place I kept giving away. I kept Caleb's mark and lost the man who had tried to stay without owning me. The clear bandage is gone now, but the ink remains. Samir let me keep my proof and took his name out of it.